Alright, welcome back to Star Ocean Anamnesis, and today we're going to be taking a look at Narukami, the badass that he is. So, let's go. His first talent, Self-Proclaimed Special Investigation Team, increases the entire party's HP by 55% and gives them a 20% HP anti-flinch. A 55% party-wide HP buff is the largest party-wide buff that we have right now, giving everybody a ton more bulk, but it also pairs very well with the HP anti-flinch because now everybody can take more damage before the anti-flinch stops working. And then his second talent, Izanagi, increases the entire party's single target damage by 35% or 50% whenever the hit count is above 150 hits, and whenever element burst stun occurs, it increases single target damage for the entire party by 65% for 30 seconds. Single target damage has become somewhat of a rarity on current gen defenders, so it's nice to see a recent one have it. 50% at 150 hit counts is not that bad, you can reach it very easily, and then it goes up to 65% during element burst stun, so as long as you have a Makoto in your team, you should be able to kill whatever you're fighting very quickly during element burst stun. And then his third talent, One Who Provides, increases the order gauge by 100% when the mission starts, and reduces AP consumption by 70% during the order. This lets you start out with one order, which doesn't really come into play that often, but seeing as how he does reduce AP cost by 70%, you could always start off with a bunker or a heat up and use that AP cost reduction to charge your rush really quickly. And then his last talent, True Bonds, gives you a 150% AP recovery on normals, 10% HP recovery every 3 seconds after he guards, and he can also guard from every single direction. The normal attack AP recovery is very nice for you because he can basically fill up his entire AP bar with only one normal attack combo, so that's really good. And guarding is what happens when you're standing still and you get hit by an attack. In this case, it gives him an HP regen, which basically means that he can regen HP on demand. Unfortunately, guarding is a little risky in the higher stages, so I don't recommend you do it that often. And now moving on to his battle skills, first up we have Sever. It has an attack multiplier of 430%, it does 4 hits, costs 20 AP, and it's a close range skill. This skill is decently fast, doesn't do a whole lot of damage, so you could use it if you want. Unfortunately, I think Zio is better in basically every single way, so I wouldn't really recommend you use this. And speaking of Zio, it has an attack multiplier of 380%, it does 3 hits, costs 19 AP, has a lightning element, and it is a long range attack. Zio is a very fast combo filler. It's also a long range attack, which means you could charge assault it if you ever need to create some space between you and the enemy. Overall, I highly recommend you use this. And then we have Cross Slash. It has an attack multiplier of 1240%, it does 5 hits, costs 33 AP, and it's a close range attack. This attack does a whole lot of damage, but unfortunately it's kind of slow, so I would say that this attack and Sever are kind of interchangeable. You can use whichever one fits you the best. And then we have Slash. It has an attack multiplier of 1500%, it does 4 hits, costs 30 AP, and it is a short range attack. This is Narukami's best attack by far. It does a ton of damage, it's very fast for how much damage it does, and it also has excellent rush gain, so try to use this attack as much as you can. And lastly, we have his rush, Izanagi Zeodyne. It has a 4500% attack multiplier, a thunder element, and it increases attack damage by 50% for the entire party and reduces their damage taken by 20% for 20 seconds. This rush can hit some decent numbers. Of course, he's not going to outdamage Joker with it, but personally I would put this somewhere in the middle of the rush chain, so spot 2 or spot 3 would be perfect. And the post-rush buff isn't bad. Damage reduction is always nice to have. 20% is kind of on the low end, and it's also post-rush, so that kind of sucks, but it's, better than nothing. And then the 50% attack damage is also just really good. And now we move on to equipment. Great swords have some very powerful weapons in stock, and luckily, unlike one-handed swords, they're not limited. So, the first weapon I recommend is one of the weapons that you can get from the Persona event, the Golf Club. It increases Slash's damage by 20%, your HP by 20%, and your crit chance by 20% when the hit count is above 150 hits. If you want to run another free greatsword, we also have the Durandal, which gives you lifesteal, but you can also get lifesteal from your accessories, so therefore I recommend you go with the Persona event weapon to get some more damage output. And for a gacha weapon, I recommend the Umbrella Blade, which gives you Dark Imbuement, dark damage plus 40%, it increases your crit rate by 50% when the hit count is above 200 hits, and at max limit break you unlock AP recovery on normals. Of course, the limit break factor with the AP recovery is not necessary because you already has that naturally, so you don't need to go for that. Dark Imbuement and Dark Damage increases damage output against bosses weak to dark, of course, and you could also slot in 3 gear, so that's nice. And then lastly, the critical rate again increases his damage output because he doesn't have that yet. And then the second gacha weapon I recommend is the famed sword Tsubaki Otoshi, which gives you lightning imbuement, lightning damage plus 40%, reduces the attack damage that you take by 30%, and it increases your crit rate by 50% when the hit count is above 150 hits. Attack damage reduction pairs very well with Narukami because he doesn't have anything of the sword pre-rush, and even post-rush it pairs very well with his damage reduction. Of course, you could also just run a teammate like Maid Fiore who has a damage reduction like that. Then the crit rate buff is very good. If you can get that, make sure you go for that. Lightning imbuement, lightning damage increases your damage output, and this weapon is limited, so if you don't pull it during the Persona event, you can't get it anymore. And when it comes to accessories, you have a whole lot to choose from. Personally, I recommend the Midsummer Capelline, which gives you Taunt plus 3 and a 5% lifesteal. Taunt plus 3 makes holding onto aggro a lot easier, and the 5% lifesteal is a very easy way to recover HP. I've also seen some people run accessories that increase movement speed. You can do that as well. It makes you a lot faster and a bit easier to control, but make sure that you have something that gives you Taunt plus 3 to make your tanking job a bit easier. And when it comes to assists, you aren't really restricted in what you can run, but personally I recommend you go with characters that increase the party's damage output a bit more, like RK with her elemental damage buff, Makoto with his crits, or you could always go with a more selfish option like Daos with his HP recovery and crits for yourself, or Albo with his 100% attack up. And now we move on to the battle skill setup. My recommendation starts with Zio. I really like this attack because it's fast, you can use it from range, and doesn't cost a lot of AP either. And secondly, you can run either Sever or Cross Slash. That's completely up to you. Personally, I go with Cross Slash because, just in case my finger slips and I don't hit Slash, I always have Cross Slash to fall back on. Like I said, it doesn't really matter. And then the last attack is Slash. It does a lot of damage and has some good rush gain as well. And for a combo, I recommend a normal attack into Slash, into Zio, into as many slashes as you can fit. AP cost reduction is very important for Narukami, even if it's only 5% off of an accessory, so you can go that route if you want. Then again, Narukami does have his own AP cost reduction talent with the orders, so you might want to start using those a bit more, or at least get used to using those. Narukami has a fairly standard talent set, so you do have to be a little careful with who you pair him up with. Luckily, his numbers are very high, so he's most likely going to overwrite who you pair him up with. But the first character I recommend is Colleen. She has a party-wide attack buff that's based on hit count. She also has a party-wide AP consumption reduction buff that's also based on hit count. And lastly, she increases her own stats by 20% when the hit count is above 100 hits. Secondly, I recommend a New Year's Tika. She has a party-wide damage buff that's based on hit count. She also has a party-wide HP regen, 10% every 5 seconds. And lastly, she's really good at building hit counts, and she also gives the entire party extra hits on normals and battle skills. And lastly, to complete our greatsword duo, I recommend a Courtesan Miria. She has a buff that increases the damage that enemies take, which is based on Miria's HP, and of course she has some really good damage output. Narukami doesn't have a whole lot of buffs, but the ones that he does have are very powerful, and as long as he doesn't get paired with other defenders, he'll be good to go. And if you're wondering, he does pair extremely well with Joker and Makoto, and I'm sure that the other 3 Persona characters will also pair very well with him. So to summarize, Narukami is one of the best defenders that we have access to right now. He has a unique order buff that decreases the AP cost during orders, which while it doesn't come into play that often, when it does, during element burst stuns for instance, it increases the entire party's damage output by a lot. And of course, if an enemy is not moving during a power-up, of course, you could always proc this and maybe get your rush. Secondly, he also has a very powerful heal that can be procced basically whenever you want. Whenever you successfully guard an attack, he gets that 10% HP recovery every 3 seconds for a whole 20 seconds. He lasts for a very long time. So he should never be able to die, especially not if you have something like lifesteal on his weapon. He'll become an invincible tank. Unfortunately, the problem with guarding is that it's very dangerous in the higher difficulties. Even if you manage to guard an attack, you're still going to take a lot of damage, and you can only block one attack at a time, so if you don't dodge out of that block quickly enough, you're most likely going to get one-shotted. Regardless, Narukami is a very good defender, and I can't wait to see what other mastery talents they're going to bring out in the future, because they could make Narukami very powerful. And that does it for my Narukami guide. So that covers all 3 of the male Persona characters, and I guess tomorrow we're getting the next 3 Persona characters. I'm really excited to see what they're going to be able to do, and I guess I will see you all later. Peace!